So, our sages teach us that the nation of Israel was on the 49th level of spiritual impurity and unholiness when we were redeemed from Egypt. That's 49 out of 50, right? Not only weren't we worthy of redemption, but we were on the cusp of spiritual annihilation altogether. Yet, from that lowest place, they experienced the greatest redemption that anyone has ever experienced in world history. So far, the sages say that the final redemption will be far greater than that one. I can't even imagine. So why do I say that? Why is this unconditionality of Hashem's love, which, by the way, I still struggle with in the form of this divine Excel sheet that I was talking about, with the deposits and the withdrawals and the whole thing. Why is the unconditionality of Hashem's love so critical that I would go so far as to say that we're not actually in a relationship with Hashem in the highest, truest form of who Hashem is, but we're serving a different God altogether? And I think the reason I say that, and by the way, maybe I'm overstating this, but I don't think so. I'll try to be more confident in what I'm saying. The reason I'm saying that is because it's the lack of this belief in Hashem loving us unconditionally that leads to idolatry. And by the way, thinking about it like this makes me even more sympathetic to the psychology of idolatry, because it's just so hard for flesh and blood like us to realize and to feel worthy of being loved at all, particularly loved unconditionally. Maybe you're better at that. I know there's a lot of Jews in this group, a lot of Christians, and a lot of Christians talk about this. Maybe there's something about it that makes it easier for you to come to the terms with that unconditionality of things. But it's that difficulty in being the recipient of God's unconditional love, I believe, that leads us to create these gods in our own image. Gods that we can more understand and identify with, that are more like us. Gods whose love is more like our love, which is, let's face it, conditional. And because our love is so conditional, it's hard for us to put ourselves aside enough to even fathom that Hashem's love for us is truly unconditional. Because as we know, the root of all idolatry originally was derived from our relationship with Hashem. But as the Egyptians and the Canaanites and the Jebusites, they couldn't imagine that the singular one God of the universe actually loves them and cares about them, particularly considering, the very famous sinful nature that they had to turn to these intermediate powers like the stars or the moon or the sun or the animals, because with these forces, they could strike a deal, right? They could offer their sacrifices, offer their children as sacrifices, cut their own flesh, shave their own heads, whatever they would offer their sacrifices, what that meant to them. And by doing so, a deposit had been made in the divine Excel sheet, and now Thor or whatever it is, Baal Peor, or now their crops would be blessed, and their cities would be protected, and their wives would be fertile, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense? Why we would need that? The revelation, of Hashem's unconditional love on Pesach shows us that this type of thinking is idolatrous, and the psychology behind it is just plain false.